Hey, this is Professor Triplet, and now we're going to work on the top cap of the body. So let's go ahead and just look at it really quick. I'm going to pull this out, my 3/4 view here, and go ahead and just move this off to the side for a second. Take a look at it. You can see it right here. It is a separate piece from the body. Eventually we'll put a little notch in there. And let's go ahead and get started. So we can hide that, leave it there for now. So okay, let's start off on this side. It's kind of like the theme. I like to start on the side with the measurements. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab the edge loop, then grow my selection, shift greater than grows the selection, and then I'm going to do a extraction, or actually a duplicate I should say. So hit the duplicate button, and then I can go ahead and just drag this out. I'm keeping in mind that I'm lining it up with my my reference back here. So hit W on my keyboard, and then I'll just go to my edges, grab the top edge on here, move it up to the top there, and then I'm going to go ahead and extrude those in. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit extrude right away. Use this little key here, or widget here, to move it in. And so now it's extruded, and we're extruding almost up to this dome part right here. Now, the reason why I know that is because I have examined this bottom piece here. Let's see. Actually, I want top. It's actually the top piece. So we can see right here, this is the lip that we're creating, and then it almost goes to the rounded part there. So we just undo that. Move there. All right, let's keep going. So we've got this. Let's grab our edge here, and let's go ahead and, you know what? Before we bevel this edge, which is, we're eventually going to bevel it, let's go ahead and actually lay out the UVs. I know it sounds like we're doing it way too early, but it actually might be a lot easier to lay out the UVs right now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change to my UV editing here, and looks like I got some tools on, but let's turn off the checker map for now. And let's just, we're in object mode, hit Control 1. Oops, let's do that again. Control 1, there we go. Now we got it isolated. I'm going to turn off the shading for right now, the distortion shading. So we already had this section here that was laid out properly. If we wanted to, we could just try to connect all these up here, but that would take a long time. So it's actually probably just easier just to grab this whole thing and then just put another cylindrical and wrap on it. The only problem that we're going to find is that this top piece here is actually going to be laying like with no UV space. It's going to be completely even with this top edge on here. So we'll see how that works in a second. I am going to turn my checker map back on because you can see it's not the right aspect ratio. So while we still have our widget here, we can actually just pull this till we get our checkers looking like squares, and that looks pretty good. There we go, something like that. Okay, so and see the top here now how it's all stretched. That's because it's sharing UV space. It's not pulled out the right distance. So I'm going to go ahead, and the way to take care of that is just go to your edges and double click on this edge here in the middle, and do that in your 3D viewport. If you do it in here, it's going to actually grab the whole border. So at this point, I'm just going to go to my move tool. So get your move tool out, and then maybe zoom in here a little bit. You don't have to, but I just feel like doing it. And then I'm going to just pull this out till these start looking like squares. And that's pretty good, about right there. Okay, it's not completely perfect because I'd have to relax the top here to get rid of some of this tapering that's happening in the squares, but that's such a minor amount of tapering that the checker's doing that I'm not really worried about it. If it was going all the way to the center, I would have to lay this out differently, but in this case, I think we'll be able to get away with that. Okay, so of course what we're thinking about too, the whole idea is that when we put our textures on here, we don't want the textures to be all warped. So you want to try to make sure that you know, your checker map that you see here looks pretty square and not warped looking. So that's what it is. It's just a guide for you. So let's go back to our modeling now. And actually, you know what? We can model right here, even though it is a UV thing. Let's go ahead and just model the bevel right here. And so I'll show you what happens and why we did the unwrap right away. So I did this, I'm doing the bevel here, and you can see, right, if you looked in the viewports, let me undo that, and I'll go ahead and bevel again. You can see it actually, it updates right here in the viewport, in the, I'm sorry, in the UV viewport. So since we had simpler geometry, it was actually easier to deal with, but if I would have beveled first, then I would have had to like adjust all these different edges. So now I didn't have to do that. So I'm going to undo that actually, because I do need to have my references out. So let's go to my object mode, hit Control 1, hit 6 on my keyboard. Now that my references are out, I can come over here to this corner, grab that edge again. It's already selected, so we just hit bevel. All right, there we go. Let's, I'm going to move this off a little bit. All right, so we can just add a segment, and then we'll play with the fractions so we can hit our reference right there. And you can see it's updating right here inside of the UVs, which is nice. And so we just basically saved ourselves a little trouble. That's all. And I'm going to select these faces, go to Mesh Display, say Soften Edge. So go to Object Mode, and now I'm just going to keep deleting my history a little bit here. Double select, grab the faces. So what we have to do now is we have to give this thing some thickness, and the thickness is going to be done through the extrude. And actually, before I do that, let me go ahead and just add in one edge loop here. So I'm going to add a nice little tight edge loop right there, and this edge loop down at the bottom here, let's go ahead and just pull that down just a little bit like so. And you know what I'm noticing here? I grabbed these edges off of this piece here, and as I'm looking at this thing actually, it's kind of tapering out a little bit. So I think there's a problem that I got a little bit of the curve of this object. So I'm gonna actually kill this bottom row here. And actually, I'll just even grow the selection once and kill both of these. So now I'm pretty sure I got the straight section of this part. And then I'm going to go to the edge here, and I'm going to drag this down. Now, this is not, you know, I can come into a problem here where this isn't going to work with my UVs. But we actually have this fun tool inside of our Move tool that we can turn on, which is called Preserve UVs. And what this will do is that if I turn this on and then I move this in the viewport, like so, watch what happens in my UV viewport. All of a sudden, those UVs jump down. So there you go. That's it's a nice little tool. Sometimes it doesn't work. There's certain situations you try to use it and it doesn't let you use it, or you'll have like the UVs will actually snap back, and you're like, wait, what's going on? You know, it doesn't let you move stuff. But if it's a simple case like this, this works pretty good. Okay, so now we have UVs that should be pretty good. We can double check them just really quick. Let's just make sure that that worked right. Yep, that looks good. Okay, and then we're back to where we were, which was to add in another edge loop like this, nice tight one, and like that. There we go. And then this object, this thing right here, I'm just going to move to the center for right now, kind of center that. And now we're ready to thicken it. So let's go ahead and grab everything, and I'm going to go ahead and just hit extrude. Okay, so I'm extruding, and I'm not going to use the offset or pull the widget. I'm actually going to use this thickness. So I'm just going to go ahead and just start dragging on that. But I'm going to go in, actually, so go in the negative. So I'm at negative 0.02. I actually want to be more like negative 0.01. And let me just make sure this looks good. Now it's black right now, and that's okay because it's inverted. The normals are inverted. And hard to see because I give so much real estate to the UV view. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, so let's hit W just to drop the tool. We'll double click on this, and we can go ahead and go Mesh Display Reverse. So now we can see it properly. let's isolate this again, Control 1, so we can see what we got going on. Hit F to frame it on your keyboard, and looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to have a problem though, and that is that when you use the extrude tool for thickness, what it's basically going to do is it's going to take these faces on the outside and it's going to basically duplicate them on the inside. So if I roll over that same polygon, if you're looking in my viewport, my UV viewport, you can see that I'm actually they're laying directly on top of each other, which is going to give us the same problem with these faces, which basically they're getting no UV space. They're all pinched together. So that's okay though. There's an easy way to fix this. So all we have to do is go ahead and go to Edge Select and double click on this edge here. We're going to decide to break this edge off and this edge off. Now the reason why we choose these inner edges is because when we're rendering the model, or when we're later when it's finished, you want the textures to look seamless through here, and then you want to hide where you have your seams where you have to break it off. So the inner edges makes the most sense to break the inner edges here at these corners. Okay, so let's go ahead and just go into my tools here. Let's move this out a little bit, and UV toolkit. Now the older Maya, you're going to want to go and do a cut, and the cut, actually the old icon looks almost exactly like the cut tool icon. I think that's why they changed this icon. This is a new one for 2018, but the old icon looks like it says cut, and then it has like another line underneath here with this like little X-Acto knife thing. So you'll have to look for it. It's usually up here, and sometimes it's actually collapsed. If you see like a little bar like this with a little arrow, you can actually click on that arrow and it will expand. So sometimes this tool would be hidden in the older Maya. I'm just giving this out because I know a lot of people that are watching this video might be using like 2016 or something, and it'll be hard to follow along without knowing that. So okay, so I went ahead, let's go ahead and cut those. So now we have, those are seams, and we'll know that those are seams because when we click off of it, it'll give us this thick white line, and that is actually this tool right here. You can actually turn that off if you want. Now this right here, this edge, I actually want to sew together that other part. So I'm going to go ahead and move this first. So let's go ahead and just move this out. And you know what, it'd probably be easier just to go and grab these faces all together and move them up like this. So you can see they're all completely pinched, so that's not going to be good. So what we want to do then is just grab this edge, the bottom edge here, and what we have to do is when you select the edges, it actually selects, since this is a shared edge between this piece and the other piece, we actually have to convert to UVs. So UVs actually gets it, like each face has its own UVs. So what I'm going to do to convert to UVs, I'm just going to hold Control, right click, and then I'm going to drag off to this little icon here that says to UVs, and then the next one's to UVs, and you'll see you get these little green dots coming up. And what we want to do is get rid of selecting the bottom green dots, and so now I only have the UVs for this top face here. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull those down. So now we're giving space that we need to this UVs. So that should be good. And we just have to do the same thing on the bottom here too. So let's go to faces, double click, and we can move this down. And then we're going to go ahead and just select the inner edge. And so what I'm doing is Control, and then right clicking, dragging to UVs. And then of course it's like I said, it selects both sets of UVs because they're both affected by the edge. So I'm just going to Control marquee over that and deselect it. And then this one I'll just pull up like this. So now if we look at our shaded here, let's see what we got. All right, so we still have this inner piece right here that we need to move because it's sharing the same space and we have to adjust it. So here's a little trick. Since we're still in our UVs, I'm just going to select one UV on the inside, and then over here I'm going to do that control right click and drag again, but instead of going to UVs there, I'm actually going to go to UV shell. And now what that does is it only selects within the shell of the object. So that is the UV shell within the UV editor. So I can move that off like so. So now we have this all set up, and we can actually stitch all these things together. So if I come in here closer and I select this bottom one, we should be seeing this one light up. Why are we not seeing that one light up? That's concerning to me. Well, let's find out what's going on here. There should be a congruent one that lights up. Let's go to edges. Edges actually is easier to see. So I grab that edge, and that edge is trying to select this edge right here. So let's see where we're at here. I'm going to hit F on my keyboard. It'll frame it. Okay, so it looks like I've just got these things. So this edge right here is supposed to be attached to that part right there. Okay, that should line up. But what I'm trying to illustrate in this is that these UVs are actually up, like they're flipped. So we're going to have to flip these back. So what I'm going to do is, first things first, is I'll go ahead and I'm going to stitch these two sets of UVs together. So I'm going to just double click here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just go sew and stitch together, and you can see it move those UVs down and stitch it to the bottom part. But like I said before, I want to have a continuous on the top. That's okay. I can still do that because I can stitch this whole piece up to the top piece here. So it's basically like you would see the UVs and they would curl over the side here and come back down. But at some point you do have to have a break. So we'll just say this inner edge right here will be our break. Okay? Or you could even do this inner edge too, but it's fine to do this edge too. It's fine. So let's go ahead and we're going to go ahead and stitch to here. Now watch what happens here. By the way, I double clicked inside this viewport. Not want to do that. I actually want to do it here. Okay, so actually it should be right there. So oh, I take that back. Is it right there? It's very hard to see right now. Okay, yeah, it's that one right there. So this piece that I moved down here is gonna click to that. So I'm gonna hit stitch together. Well, something has gone wrong. When I did the stitch together, they're laying on top of each other again, and that is because when I did the extrude, this inner piece, what it did is it kept basically like the same normals, but then I went ahead and flipped. I did a reverse, if you remember in the mesh display, I reversed the normals. So this piece in here is actually reversed. It should be like facing a different direction, or one of the pieces is. Actually, it might be this outer piece is the one facing the wrong direction. So what we need to do then is we need to flip one of these pieces. So the way to do that is just come in here and double click on this set, and inside of your tools, now it's going to be different in the older Maya, but the tool is basically the same, it's just in a different place. So I believe it's in transform, and then tools, and then it's actually this flip tool. So you can flip it on the U or the V. We just want to flip it horizontally, so that's the U. So I'm going to flip it, and you can see, I don't know if you noticed that, but in the video you'll see that one of these green boxes just flipped over to this side. So now if I go ahead and I stitch these together, so let me hit 2 on my keyboard, and let's stitch this edge together. You can see that it works. You'll see in a second here when I get back to my so stitch. Okay, so now they're right. Let's move this off because it's overlapping. And so now we just have to stitch the last part on. And so we want the seam to be on the inside here. So let's just make sure that we select this edge that we want to be intact. We select that edge, and then we go ahead and sew that one on. Okay, so we'll hit stitch and sew, and then it's sewed it up to the top there. All right, so if you're trying to imagine how this works, think think of it, let's show both of these at the same time. So this face right here should be down here. So let me grab that, and then this, and then this, and we're not seeing it because it's way over there. Okay, so since it's not down there, that means we just have to rotate this. So if we're so in other words, like if we want to have this oriented the right way, we'll have to just rotate this like so. So I just held J on my keyboard when I was rotating to get the snaps. Okay, so let's see this again. So if we grab here, or even right here at the seam, right here, right here, right here, right there. Okay, and then this bottom one's the bottom one there. So you can see, and then it gets to the top there. This is where it's going to start right here. So then it goes the other direction, and then it wraps around. So that's just an illustration of kind of how this is working. Okay, so it's basically this piece laid flat with some seams cut. Try to think of a box. If you're trying to imagine how UVs work, think of unfolding a box. You know, it's a box are made to fold together, and they glue an edge together. But they can come in a flat pack, you know, so you can actually flatten them all out. That's basically how the UVs work. Okay, so that's pretty good. We just got to lay in some new edge loops. I'm going to save really quick. The only edge loops that we need to lay in at this point are right here on these pieces. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my cut tool and just really quickly, I want these to be pretty tight. So I'm going to cut them in pretty tight, like so, and then the same thing up here. All right, so now grab all these faces, mesh display, soften edge. If you've done everything right, even without the smooth on, it should look like you have like a nice little bevel everywhere on those edges. So you can see that. Not too much though, because it is a pretty tight edge if you actually look at the references. This bevel is actually, or this edge is a little high for me, so I'm actually going to grab that and move it down just a little bit. You middle mouse drag once you get that widget the direction you want, you can just click on it, and then you can middle mouse drag when you get closer. See, watch, I can move it up and down by middle mouse dragging. Okay, so I want to get it tighter, so that's good. Okay, so now it should look like a nice little tight bevel. There we go. And then if I wanted to, I could, you know, hit the smooth and just see how it's going to look with the smooth on, which looks super clean. And yeah, there we go. Looks good. Let's move this off to where it should go. It's a pretty long tutorial, so let's end it right here. Say happy modeling.